All right, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation today and to be here. And I know that there's people watching on both LinkedIn and then, of course, this will be up on YouTube. So I'm really excited about meeting with Aubree. And I know you guys see the title Leading with Light, and you know that gets in my soul and it makes me so happy. Um, by the time you guys watch this, I think I'll be done with my presentation. I'm speaking on Tuesday at the NAEP National Summit for Educational Equity 2025. And I am also aware that that title, being in Washington, D.C., and hearing that there's an equity conference for education is interesting, but I'm actually really excited. I'm talking about breaking the poverty cycle through education, specifically building inclusive pathways to economic mobility, and just talking about the building of TTC College and how our goal was to get people into jobs and moving forward through the things that we need them to be able to do in this world so that we can have a world that's beautiful and loving for all people. So I'm really excited about that. I will definitely talk about that and post about it on LinkedIn as I go and when I come back. And with this episode, when I think about leadership, I think about the quiet strength of those who hold our entire worlds together. Yeah, at home, at work, in communities. I think about women like Aubree who lead not just with strategy and with this fiery directive, but that also have a deep, compassionate care. And this is something that we need to get to as leaders, is a place where we can balance many of these things. I started working at Rancho San Antonio back in 2005. And for many people in behavioral health in Los Angeles, this was our training ground. It was where we grew up. I actually remember a lot of my really close friends came from here, and we were able to provide treatment and to provide mentorship and educational resources and family work and just all kinds of stuff. But that was the place that really taught me how to be. I'm not a clinician, but I've worked in the counseling field and I've worked in behavioral health, but I got to be around these incredible clinicians who not only changed my life in terms of being able to support people, but being able to teach me about a different level of leadership in healthcare. And being at Rancho allowed me to write Afro Clouds and Nappy Rain, which many of you guys will know was the book that I won the NAACP Image Award for way back in the day. But what you may not know is that this book was dedicated to 7 boys from this facility that inspired me to talk about youth in the justice system. And so it's such a incredible thing. I always feel connected to my people at Rancho. And I always say that some of the most important leaders in my life came from there. And I still meet with them, I have lunch with them. And Aubrey's one of those people. So I'm really excited to have her on today. I also thought about this song. I tried to think about what song would relate most to Aubrey for me. Look, I'm already choking up. But I immediately went to a song that I've written about in my newsletter last year called If I Could, which was from my generation, was sang by Regina Bell, but it's also been done originally by Nancy Wilson and then later on by Celine Dion when she did a tribute album to her kid. And I thought about this song because I think that during Women's History Month and during a time where there's so much change in leadership, that if I could really encapsulate this idea of motherhood and this idea of being able to nurture people, nurture your children, but to know that at some point we have to let them go, we have to let them move on their own and grow. And when I think about great mothers, when I think about great leaders, I think about Aubrey. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And, Regina Bell said, "If I could, I'd protect you from the sadness in your eyes, give you courage in a world of compromise. Yes, I would if I could." We'll be right back. I'm going to bring on Aubree and introduce her and see you in a second. Okay. Now, I don't really need a script to be able to introduce someone who I've literally known more than half of my entire life at this point. But Aubree is the first woman in the organization's 90-year history to hold the role of executive director at Rancho San Antonio. She's broken barriers in a historically male dominated space of healthcare and behavioral health. And when I met Aubree, she was a licensed marriage and family therapist working in a group home, and she spent years doing deep transformative work in mental health with youth who are adjudicated and their families. She also specializes in substance use recovery and trauma informed care. And back in 97, Aubree started as a therapist and worked her way up, proving that leadership isn't about where you start, but how you grow. One of the things that I love about Aubree is she's always had this commitment as a wellness driven leader, a longtime practitioner of mindfulness, yoga, and holistic healing. We used to talk about yoga and share our horror stories all the time. And she leads with an understanding that leadership begins with self care. Aubree is a champion for the next generation. She's committed to mentoring and paving the way for people in leadership and bringing a heart centered, compassionate approach to executive decision making. And so, for those of you out there leading, whether in your homes, your workplaces, your communities, I want you to think about what's a lesson that shaped you, that taught you how to lead. And that's what we're talking about with Aubree today. So I want you guys to give a huge virtual hand clap for Aubree Sweeney.
Hi,
Hi, Aubree.
James.
Oh my gosh, it is so good to see you and to have you here with us on Golden Light Academy, which is still crazy for me to say, but I'm bringing in my favorite people in the world and beautiful souls that I think are leading the charge of how we lead in this time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here. This is so exciting.
Okay, so I have a lot that I want to get into, and I also realize that we have a very special relationship. I feel like I've known you forever. It's been over 20 years. I met you back in 2005. It's before you had kids, and when you were in the group home, and um, you just were always a light. I want to know. There's going to be a lot of people who watch this that want to know who you are. Like, who is Aubree when you think about the parts of you that are important or the whole of you? How would you describe yourself?
Whew, that's a good leading question, James. I'm just sitting in the magic of what this is. Like the fact that you invited me to be here. I just before we start, I have to give a massive shout out to you and who you are and what you've created. And so your audience knows, like, James doesn't really prep anybody to be on this. He just says, come and be you. And it's really authentic, and you're really authentic. And then he says, and just be, I tell all my guests, be prepared. This could go viral. And that's you. Like, like you're prepared to go viral at any minute. And then I texted him last night because I had this vision of when we did a Halloween show at Rancho years ago. And most of us come and like put a couple kids in like a little costume and sing a song. And James reenacted Thriller. And I don't mean just reenacted Thriller, like he took over the whole campus and did a Thriller video. So I know I'm supposed to answer about me, but I
Well,
can't.
let's just stay there for a second
Okay,
because
because it's
in my entire life, like in my entire professional career, that is probably in the top 5 memories that I've ever had. And it was we had all of these boys who were, gangsters, and who had lived these difficult lives, and they are good kids. But to see them put on all of the uniforms from the Thriller video, and then to take over Rancho has a big, beautiful campus, and we were outside on the street with smoke machines, and we had all these different characters, and the music was just blasting outside, and they reenacted the entire video, like from start to finish. I mean, it was really beautiful. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done.
wow.
Great. It was awesome.
I love hearing that, and I love that that was the vision that came to me last night was like this insane. I'm like, when you throw a party, some of us are worried, is anyone going to show up? And James is worried, is there going to be enough room? Like, it's just, it was phenomenal. So I love that that's one of your top five. And, and I love the introduction. I love the title. We didn't talk about any of that. And it really just speaks to, I don't know if I always achieve it, but who I am as a person really just tries to see the good in everything, in everyone, in every opinion, in every thought, in every experience. And it's probably my best quality as a leader is I really try to listen. It's probably also the most criticized quality I get because it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and people get exhausted. They say my meetings go too long or you're taking too much of a consensus, make a decision. But I truly walk into every experience with what does this have to offer me? And in a time in today's political world where we are so polarized, um, you know, I really try, even in the information that is so hard to be experiencing right now and watching people feel unsafe in today's world. I really just try to listen and say they're coming up with this for some reason. Where is the good in that? And what can we learn from this? And how can we grow? And or what, even if I don't agree with it, what in their life experiences is bringing them to this place. And we don't have to stay in this place, we might change and be at a different place tomorrow. So just trying to see everybody as best I can in wholeness and whole person, really being whole person. And I'm all about wellness and understanding your body. I think our body gives us cues and messages all day long, and to not turn that off. And when that little flutter happens in our body, what is it telling us? And I think our body can tell us when something is wrong and needs to be healed, and whether that's physical or emotional. Check into those cues and don't separate, and don't just go, oh, my knee hurts, it twinges every so often, or oh, I get a stomach ache when this person walks in the room. Really take time to unpack that and listen to our bodies. And for people who've experienced trauma, we've had to turn off some of those cues because we don't want to be in our bodies. And I have a lot of history working with survivors of sexual assault, both at Rancho and prior to Rancho. And sometimes it doesn't feel safe to be in our bodies. So learning that reintegration process, if we've had to separate, and for those of us just in our day-to-day world, learning to listen to who we are.
I love that you started there because I remember when the love of my life passed away that you were one of the people that really was in my corner. You know, like that time period was a little hazy, and I went through this huge amount of PTSD, which I didn't know was possible if you weren't actually there when something happens. You know, in my mind it's like PTSD is, you know, you are in the middle of the war zone and the bombs are going off. But I even learned a lot about that. And I remember you know, trying to shut off things. I even had to take medication because the trauma was just, it was so deep, and it was in my dreams and in different places. So I love to hear you talk about that. And I wonder, when you're talking about understanding and listening to our bodies as leaders, what are some of the key things that you think are important for us to know about that? A lot of leaders are not in behavioral health. And so we do these trainings and we talk about this stuff, but what about the guy that is a leader at Sprint or at Costco that may not know what's happening in their body? What are some things to look for?
Great question. I mean, I tell everybody go to therapy. Like as a leader, we have an EAP. Any good company has a employment assistance program. Go learn your body, learn your mind, learn how they're connected, read books, learn what you're playing out with your people. And most of us that work a lot we see our coworkers more than we see our own families. So every coworker is some member of our family that we're playing something out with. And if we're super annoyed with so and so at work, probably they're touching some part of our story that is bringing us back either to some trauma or maybe some love, maybe someone you were, dated that you had a connection to. And so go understand what's being triggered so that you don't punish that employee or overly give that employee perks because you really like them, and utilize it. It's free counseling to go. And there's I think we've broken through the stigma of what therapy is.
I think so too.
I really think that I don't think that's the case anymore. I mean, I'll shout it from the rooftops. And
You started therapy, did you feel a lot of that resistance from people? Like I'm curious. I've never really been like a licensed therapist or anything like that, but did you actually feel that there was a resistance from the community related to going to get treatment?
well, at Rancho, everyone was mandated to be there. So that was a little different. And I don't think half of what we do at Rancho that's therapy, they even knew was therapy. Like our best sessions at Rancho, when I was driving a kid to a job interview in the van, and they don't have to look right in your eyes and they're looking forward. And as you're driving to a job interview, they divulge some major experience in their life that has formulated who they are that day. So I think there's not so much resistance as maybe judgment from the outside. And I think you still, oh, something's wrong. Or there's also a sense, even with managed care now, like 6 sessions and you're out, go fix it in 6 sessions. And there is purpose to short-term therapy. And if you have something very targeted you want to work on, that's great. But for some of us, it's going in and out our entire lives just to keep growing and understanding all the changes that are going on in our lives. And the world doesn't stop moving around us. Hopefully, we learn those tools to be able to navigate it in a different way. But we have to do CEUs, right? We have to do continuing education in every field. To me, that's continuing education on our own lives.
I love that. And you know, when you were talking, it this is one of the benefits that I think that I had, and that a lot of my I have great these incredible relationships. I don't know if you remember Takumbo, who's, you know, my
Of
best friend, and
course.
she's doing these huge things in hospitals and healthcare now. but we had the privilege of at 19 and 20 years old being able to sort of work out our own issues because we're sitting in groups with you and Joan and Judy and Sharon, but we're while we're also participating in you guys doing these therapeutic interventions, we're also learning ourselves. And I just think that it was a great way to grow up into the field and to learn, yeah, we got to take care of ourselves. I went and got a therapist, and I had a therapist, still got one, because life's all the time.
Exactly. Exactly. And so really just listening to yourself and learning that you have a voice that's worth listening to. Some people shut down that voice. Somebody in a meeting says something that you don't like or you do like, but you don't know that your opinion is worthy. Just listen to yourself, honor your gut, respect it, and then do that work behind the scenes and know yourself, understand yourself the best that you can. And it's not like, oh, I'm figured myself out. Every day we're excited and every day we're triggered.
Yeah, I used to think that I've gotten to a level where I've mastered my mind, and then something else would happen or something would change in the atmosphere or at work or nationally or in my family, and then it would feel like I'm starting all over again, and I would carry a lot of shame about it because it would feel like, well, you've been in this field forever, why can't you get past grief? I mean, how many people do you need to lose in order to feel that? Or why do you still have anxiety? Why like why are we still going through this? And I love that you're talking about we need to be able to continue and to, it's okay to, I think, have a therapist like years later and to be a leader who still talks to their therapist 20 years into their work.
You brought up the loss that you experienced, and I remember when you shared it with me how devastating it was. And anyone who knows me knows I'm like a little bit like Rain Man with dates. Like I love dates, I love numbers, and that's, I think, part of what has given me permission to be in the business world, even though I'm a therapist. And I put the date of his passing in my calendar, and I reach out to you annually. And I remember working at Rancho and with the kids directly. Now I'm obviously more in an administrative role, but anytime I learned of a youth's loss, or he would tell me about a homeboy who was shot or a family member who OD'd, and I would ask him the date, and then I would just jot it down back then in my written day planner, now my phone, and just be aware of that and tell the team, like, this might be a tough day for this kid, because if you don't ask those questions, then some kid is off the wall and they generally didn't tell you until the day after why they were off the wall. They don't have the awareness to wake up and go, today is a really sad day. It's the anniversary of losing somebody. So I might be off. They just are off. And then the next day they let you know. So I think even as leaders, we don't want to be, we don't want to cross boundaries with the people that we supervise or with our coworkers, but get to know them as humans and get to know um, something that might be a tough day, and make it safe enough for somebody to learn the cue to walk in the door and say, hey, I'm a little off today. And you know I had the pleasure a couple weeks ago of seeing so many former Rancho staff because we lost our beloved brother John Crow. And when he, at his gathering, at his memorial, just, it was this amazing outpouring of so many people. And it was really like a reunion, and walking around, and I mean, we're all asking about each other's kids and partners and lives and jobs, and we know them all as humans. It wasn't like, oh, this was my C shift. Like, this is a
Right.
human. When I was in the group home, that we had a kid who had never had a birthday party before, and he was 18 years old or 17 years old and had never had a birthday party. And so my staff gave him a birthday party, and he wanted a piñata. And we got like a Power Rangers piñata, and everybody went outside and hit the piñata, and he got his first birthday party. So
Wow.
just listening. What are people's needs? What are people's where are people's wounds and holes, and to know it's not our job to fill them all back up, but to help them see what they are and respect them and not judge them the best that we can, and just accept people for all their beauty and all their flaws.
I really appreciate you sending those messages. And I think it also ties into that type of leader that you are, but also the human being that you are, because I don't work at Rancho. I haven't worked there for a very long time, but you've been a really important friend in my life, and I've seen your kids grow up. And I remember getting the girls Terrence the Trapezoid and books by one of my dear friends, and um, just to know that somebody cares and they are thinking of you, I think is really important. And leaders can also do that. We can do that with our teams. So as you were talking, I'm jotting down all these different thoughts about what you're saying. You like, we need to remember the dates that are important. We need to start to see our people as and whole human beings, and not just their titles or what they do, or C shift. For those of you guys who don't know, C shift was the hardest role because we didn't get to see all of the leaders, most of the time, because they usually worked Monday through Friday. But I started a C shift at Rancho, and it was like Friday through, I think, Monday. And that's where everything would pop off. And everybody would, our boys were having a hard time because it was the weekend, they didn't have school. So that was also my hazing and my learning how to manage problems on my own. But shout out to Andre and Trisha, who really mentored me. I mean, I wouldn't even be the leader that I am today if it weren't for Andre. And I mean, just phenomenal people. It's the other thing that I think Rancho has given, and I could talk about that all day. I mean, I have so many stories. But now you have worn many hats in your life and your career, and most of Golden Global is focused on leadership, and we work with a lot of leaders as an executive coach, or through our learning lab like Golden Light Academy and things like that. And I'm wondering for you, how has your definition of leadership changed over time?
It's a great question also. I think I've honed in on some qualities of leadership, and I've had to grow thicker skin, and I've had to realize that I just used this analogy the other day that I was at the Hollywood Bowl and they scored music to film, and the composer explained that they have to score to an exact seat in the middle of the Hollywood Bowl so that the mouth looks like it's matching the score on the movie, because if they otherwise, by the way sound travels, it's going to look wrong for the first row or wrong for the back row. So they have
Wow.
this exact place that they play the music to in the video. And I use this analogy that sometimes we have to lead to row N. Like we have to figure out who's in row N, because the people in the front row are going to get really upset that it's not matching the words, and the people in the back row are going to get really upset. So realizing that, and most people don't sit in row N. Most people either are in the back row because that's all they could afford and they just want to see the
That's
show,
important.
or they've got box seats and they're up front. And so I think I've had to really learn that I can go home at night and not everyone's going to be happy, but I can go home at night and know I did my very best and I listened and I tried, and that has to be enough. And to hear it. I always think about, they say like some some movie stars read their reviews and some don't because it trips them up. And I even thought about it with this episode. Like, I do I watch it and analyze myself, or do I just let it go be in the universe and not critique myself? And and I don't know the answer yet. I think it depends how it goes. But
I mean, this is going to be a
oh,
really good
good.
episode, so you're probably going to want to go back and rewatch it at some point.
So I think, when people give me feedback, I really listen, and some of it's really hard to hear. And so I think that I don't know that my definition or my experience of leadership has changed as much as it's become I've grown and I've become tougher, but still stay true to who I am as a person and not let go of those core values and, you know, still be willing to do any job on campus to this day, just be willing
Yes.
to do any job on campus, when the trash needs to be taken out, whatever it is, like you're never too good for that. And if you think you are, um, you're probably lose some respect for some people from some.
I love that. And I actually talked about a similar story in my newsletter this week where I remember this is back in the day, and somewhere where I was working, like the showers weren't being cleaned correctly, and the patients were the ones cleaning it. And I remember one day, and I was the leader of this unit, and one day I put on some flip flops, and I got some bleach and some chemicals that I would never let them use, and I went in there and I scrubbed that shower. And I think for me, it was just kind of like well, I just need to get it done. I wasn't thinking much of it, but I had a part time staff who worked a few hours who came in and saw, and he was like, he's always talked about this from this day forward of how he saw me in there in shorts and flip flops cleaning the bathroom. And he was like, if you could be the leader of this unit and you could take this much pride and you can, from his perspective, it was like lowering yourself to do something. But I didn't carry that same feeling of this is low. It felt like we're all on a shared mission. And I mean, when I was at Rancho, I remember I one of the things I remember doing is regardless of what my position was, sometimes if the receptionist wasn't there, I would sit at that desk and I would answer phones all day. And I know it was really intense because people would walk in and they'd be like, "Oh, Golden's up here," and but it just made me think that's one thing that was great about your leadership and brother and a lot of other people were we didn't feel these little U's. I remember seeing executives building a gazebo, at Rancho, and like literally out there doing construction. And these are the highest people in the company, but it really did teach us this servant model, which is I'm not surprised. This was a historically Catholic organization, and there's a big statue of Mary out in the front, but I think that's so beautiful for us to be able to cherish, do everything, be willing to do everything. I had to write that down. Um, I think one of the things that I think about when I think about Aubrey is I remember this time. I don't know where we were going, but you and I sort of became like this partnership at a point, and we were going to a training, and we decided we were going to take the train and we were getting on the red line. And if you live in LA, you understand what taking the train means. It's very efficient, but there's a lot of stuff that happens. And there was a couple things I remember. One, you were like, I'm on this train and I feel uncomfortable because I can't get to my kids if they need me immediately. And I will never forget that. The second was we you were teaching me how to like hold in my stomach so that like you could get the benefits from all of the resistance so that we could be better at yoga. And so I want to ask you about that wellness. As leaders, how do we take care of ourselves? Like what are things that we should be thinking about outside of the mental health, but the physical health, the other pieces like
I
that?
love those 2 things. And I remember that day, and I remember it was the first time where I was like, "If something happens to my babies, I can't get there. What do I do?" And I will say as a leader, so I danced growing up, and one of the things they taught us was, to hold all your stress and anxiety in your abs because that's your core, that's your strength, and it's only gonna make you look better. But if you like clench your jaw or you wrinkle your face or something happens on the outside, people see it, but nobody's ever gonna see your abs unless you're showing them. But yeah, it's a really good trick, and it has side effects of strengthening your abs. But
I
yeah,
love
I
that.
love that you remember both those stories.
No, so it was really impactful to me because I'm not a parent, and I remember thinking I've never had to consider that. And it also taught me a lot about who you are as a person because you're considering all of these different things. You're constantly aware of the fact that you're a mother while you're also a leader, and it's not a weight that I carried. And so I one respect it, but it also teaches me that it's okay to be a leader who does both. That it's okay to. I feel like you would leave campus in a heartbeat if one of the girls needed you, and um, that is something that I think speaks to a lot of leaders is they feel like, well, I have to be this leader all the time, and it's like, no, we have lives, we have other things happening.
So I think I love this topic. And when we were chatting a little before today, we talked about work life balance. And I said, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said they didn't like the term. And I started thinking, I'm like, I bet James is going to ask me, well, what term would you use instead? So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking,
That's
is
my question.
it? I'm like, I better come up with an answer. But I was thinking it's more work life integration. And that it's
Wow.
not like balance implies we're either working or we're living. And for those of us who love what we do, we want to be working. We love working and we love living. And my best ideas come to me when I slow down and I'm not working and I'm on my yoga mat or I'm on vacation or I take a break from the day-to-day function of my job and I'm actually still. That's when my best work happens, and that serves the agency that I lead. And then simultaneously at work, it's not all work. We love finding out about a good restaurant or what did you do this weekend. That is part of work. So it's not this choppy work life balance. I need to make sure to We need a balance, and we need to make sure we have friends that aren't in our field or that's all you're going to talk about. And
Yes.
4 of us that are college roommates, we're like still BFFs to this day, and we're all in really different fields, and we still get together all the time, and it keeps your mind going. And we say the 4 of us could solve anything in a room together. And and we have a doctor, a lawyer, a therapist, and retail somebody in retail the buying retail industry. So it's like a little taste of everything. And so I think it's really. And then when we talked about this episode, and I had no idea what we were really going to talk about other than this big topic of leadership, I just started writing, and I wrote like pages and pages of what does leadership mean. And I probably won't talk about any of it, but that experience framed framed so much for me. And I texted James last night. I said, I've already learned so much about myself in this process, and we haven't even done it yet. So I think self-care is journaling, writing, doing whatever it is to explore who you are, but I wrote so much about my daughters and about being a mom, and I
Oh,
realized that leadership is everywhere, and that is in our personal world. So being a parent is leading these two little beings, and you only get really a couple shots at that. You can get another job. If you screw up a job, you can go get another one. But so much of what, and now to have two adults who just are freshmen in college this year, and
I
right?
can't believe it.
It's crazy, but to watch, I felt guilty every time we were in the car and a phone rang and I was dealing with something work related, like somehow you're not tending to your kids. But now I'm watching that phone call taught them professionalism, it taught them negotiation, it taught them how to solve a problem. And I'm watching how much, and they grew up at Rancho too. We had a daycare back in the day. So they were
Yes.
literally at work with me for the first 3 years of their lives. And so this meshing of work, like who do you want to be in the workplace, that should transfer to every part of your life. So it's this integration, and I never stop working, I never stop thinking about work. I try to take breaks, but if something's going on, my head's rolling, and I never stop being a mom. When I'm on that train to go to a meeting,
Right.
I'm still thinking about my kids. So do we need to know how to turn it off sometimes? Can the voices and the reverberating thoughts become too much? Absolutely. And we all need ways to clean ourselves of that and take some space for us. But figure out your hobbies, have friends that aren't in the field that where you work. And I mean, my husband and I love to travel. People are like, what are you doing with an empty nest? We're all over the place. Like we're gone every weekend, we're visiting them, we're doing trips. Like have a life, do the things you love to do. And someone once said, do something every day that scares you. I don't know if it needs to scare you because that word's a bit strong, but like that takes a risk. And my daughter went skydiving on Sunday, and
I want to go. I
oh my
can't believe
gosh,
she's already done it.
yeah, she went skydiving and they interviewed her and she has a little video and they're like, why are you doing this? She's like, to live life. And she said it
Yeah.
with like, what do you think? To live
Like, of
life.
course, of
Of
course, this is
course.
what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
And speaking, and you brought up your husband, and it's crazy. This is how I know we're connected because this was in my head. One of the memories that I remember is you were the first person who told me that, hey, there's this thing that exists called a wellness retreat. And this was like a million years ago. Like now I think it's a lot more publicized, but you really had to like look for them back in the day. And I'm going on a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat for my 40th birthday. I know I look young, but yes, I'm turning 40 next month. And and to tie it into what you're talking about, it scares me. I'm scared of how painful is this going to be to sit for 10 hours a day and meditate, to not have your phone, to not be able to leave, and you shut off basically all communication. You're not allowed to look at people in the eye. So I know that there's a part of this is like God in the universe saying, like, through Aubree, remember that these are the things that you need to do to be well. And I wonder for you, did you have any cool experiences like that you feel like were helpful?
Oh, it's so many cool experiences. I mean, and my husband and I still go. We're actually going in next month in April. And we try to go every other year, and maybe we'll go longer now that the kids are out of the house. It's really 3 days, but and I watch a lot of people not with their partners, and they would always look at me and say, how do you get him to come with you? And he looks at it like why wouldn't I?
Right.
And but a lot of people do talk about then going back into their lives, and your brain is sparking and you have all these new ideas and excitements, and nobody to you feel like you're in this silo trying to bring it into your household without your partner being able to experience their own journey on that retreat. And so I think, well, actually, one of the things that happened when I had 3 years between Brother John and taking this position. And every day I was negotiating during those 3 years. Brother John he did the job for over, he was at Rancho for over 60 years. He did the leadership job for at least 50
Yeah.
of those years. And so it was really big shoes to fill. And so they have a labyrinth, and you walk barefoot so that you're grounded with the earth, and you walk with a question, and you try not to bias that, and you hope you walk out with some clarity. And so I just walked as slow as I possibly could. And I really didn't know when I walked out, did I want to be the leader of Rancho, or did I want permission to not be,
Wow.
take this privilege? Because it was scary. And that process between the labyrinth and talking to some other clients that were there at the time, and one of them said, you're a woman and every woman feels like they have to say yes to everything. You don't. And there's power in saying no. And when she said that to me, and there is a lot of power in the word no, but I realized, I started to argue with her why that wasn't the situation, that this is a privilege to be the first female, and like you said, a historically Catholic organization. So to not put a Catholic male in that role was really unique. And so when all that came up for me, I was at peace. I'm like, this is where I'm called to be. But I went in very scattered, very all over the place, because life is scattered. And you talk about technology, like, we do not know how to be anymore. And the world is just getting faster and more coming at us constantly. So I am so excited to hear about your experience.
You
The,
know, it's
the
going to
date
be
thing in me
intense.
wants to ask you the date so I can put it in my calendar and ask you after when you get back.
I'll text you.
Okay.
I'll send you. It's so I didn't realize how long 10 days was, and then I try to conceptualize, and I was like, that's a very long time. Like that is very long. It's like a week and a half, and it's interesting. I think leaders, we go through a lot of digital overload. I have email addresses, and people need me all the time. So it's interesting that I'm feeling a little, I don't know what the right feeling is. It's a little bit of stress, but a little bit of fear about unplugging. And that is probably the biggest lesson that I need to take from the fact that I need to unplug. You know, um, this will be the longest period of time since the cell phone has come out that I have not had access to it. And this will be the longest period of time that I will go without talking, and that I will just be with myself. And I've done float tanks, and you know, I've done. I went and did a Native American sweat lodge, and that's a couple hours, but it's like there's no coming out, and it's a little scary. But I think it's going to be beautiful, and I'll push through the pain somehow.
It's going to be incredible.
I'm glad nobody will be able to see me. Like there, if I had to vlog this or something, it would be really, really interesting. Do
Y-
you have any non-negotiables when it comes to wellness and taking care of yourself?
yes. Um, I'm like, how much do I preach this is where my head went. Um, but I love animals. So I eat an almost all vegan diet. Um, Definitely all vegetarian.
How many years? Because is I feel like as long as I've known you, or yeah, I don't even remember you eating
Yeah,
meat.
I was in high school when I gave up
Yeah.
meat, and then I gave up poultry in college. And when the turkey was green in the dorm, it kind of turned me off, and then had this shimmer on it. Um, and I think I don't know if it's a non-negotiable, but moving, just like moving. I need to move every single day and keep my blood flowing. So it's working out, but working out, I've really loosened what that means. It doesn't mean going to the gym. It doesn't have to mean going to a yoga class. So 8 of us flew to go see Brother John be buried in Texas, and 8 Rancho staff. That it was such a bonding. We call ourselves the Austin Eight now. Like it was
Wow,
so
I can
fun.
imagine. I
It
can
was so
definitely
fun.
imagine that.
And we got to the airport, and I was like, I knew by the time I got home and everything, I wouldn't have time to get to a class or anything. So I'm like, okay, who wants to go do laps in the airport? And Nisi joined me, and we just, did these laps, and super fast, and got the blood flow. Like, it doesn't matter where you are. And I look around, and like everybody's sitting, and everybody's crunched up, and everybody's closed. And it's like, so I guess it's about like opening up, moving, you know.
Wow.
I remember doing a yin yoga class once, and the teacher, he was phenomenal. His name was Bob Woodward, maybe. Anyways, he was phenomenal, and he said, what's wrong with our society, that if you're in line at Costco, you can have an entire cart filled with beer and burgers, and no one's going to look twice. But if I'm in line at yoga and I get into a squat position because I know I'm going to be there for 20 minutes in line at yoga, and I want my body to be in a good like position or take advantage, people look at me like they're going to turn me into,
Yeah,
call 911, something's wrong with this guy.
right.
And so I think just taking advantage of moments to move, to tighten those abs, or to I try to do something every day, whether that's mindfulness or movement or meditation. And really, I think it's a non-negotiable, because I won't be able to do my job. Like my mom growing up always said to me, like when I would get a little crabby, she'd like, leave and go to the gym and come back your normal self. And my husband's the same way. Like growing, it was hard to leave the kids when they were little, and working full time and go work out. And never once did he question. Like he would say, go, because you're going to come back a better mom and a better wife and a better everything. So I think the non-negotiable is just that self-care. And I think you said, when you were talking about the retreat, it sparked something in me, is like, enjoy your own company. Like, and I
Yeah.
think when you're really busy, like we're just, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in the car, I'm alone. I need, what work call do I need to make? What friend do I need to catch up with? Who can I call? Like, I need to not fill it because it's empty, but fill it because we don't have enough time and space to do all the things we're called to do. But
Yeah.
to just instead like put put a song on full blast and sing and enjoy my own company. And that's
Just
cool to
be.
feel.
Just
Yeah.
be. And I preach this to everybody, and it's like the thoughts I'm having are, you're losing 10 days of productivity. Like
Right.
it's things like that.
Right.
And it's like, but you tell everybody that this is the stuff that they need to do. So how dare you not? So that's really speaking to me. And, I know we're wrapping up. Um, I wonder, a couple things. I think that part of what I think I was asked to do by God in the universe was to help people to see how they impact others. And when I think about you and taking this role, because it's a decision that you had to make, it's a very high level position, it's very prestigious in our community and in behavioral health. Rancho's been around forever. And I wonder from you a couple things. One, if you have any advice to women that are following you as leaders. And the second thing is, what do you want your legacy to be on this earth, as a leader, as a mother, as um, a citizen, as a soul here?
Wow. In terms of advice, I really think it's it's be kind to yourself. Just we're really hard on ourselves. I think all people are, but I think females are really called to figure out how to be a mom if you're a parent, how to be really present at work, how to balance everything. And so be kind and accept yourself. And in terms of a legacy, so this is the first thing that comes to me is that when my kids were born, I asked my mom, like, what do you want them to call you? Like, is it Grammy? Is it grandma? Is it she's like, whatever they call me. That's what I want them to call me. Like, they're gonna figure out. And now she's Grammy, and they came up with that. She didn't come up with that. So I guess my first thought is I don't want to answer that question. I want people to decide what my legacy is.
Wow.
And I I don't know what that's gonna be because I didn't know you were gonna remember that story on the train. I had no clue. So how do I get to pick what my legacy for
Wow.
you is? That's your choice.
I love that. And I want to say thank you, Aubrey, for standing in and for being the person that you are. And you don't know how impactful your leadership is and how many people are moved. The people who watched you move up and the people who stand beside you and who are cheering you on. I know that it's dark times for leaders a lot of times, and there's things that we don't expect. But just know that you've changed a lot of lives, not just through therapy, but through your presence and who you are. So I'm grateful to know you, to call you friend, and I'm just so grateful I could talk to you. I think this was such a great episode, including the universe coming in and pausing it halfway through. That was probably for a reason, and I'm just really grateful for you, and have so much love and respect for you.
Thank you, James. I love you, and this has just been, like, an incredible experience, and I watched your last episode with Ashley, and you guys talked a lot about control and walking in with no control of what I'm gonna say, what questions I'm gonna be asked. I can speak to large audiences, no problem, but I know what I'm talking about. And so I guess I should take my own advice, which is just be kind and trust yourself and know that we know what we're talking about. And if we don't, that's okay too. So
Yep,
thank you for challenging me and giving me this opportunity to grow as both a person and as a leader. It's been amazing.
beautiful. Blessings, Aubrey. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So just to wrap up really quickly, Aubrey, as you can see, is a phenomenal, phenomenal individual. And I want you guys to watch, share, subscribe on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram. And I want you to remember a couple key things that she said. See the wholeness in everyone. Every coworker that we interact with could be we're having a reaction that's related to someone in our family, and so we should work through that through therapy. um, Lead to all people, not just to a certain seat in the orchestra or in the place. Be willing to do any job. Work life integration. Having friends in different fields. Leadership is everywhere in our lives. And then the power of saying no and keep your body moving. So, with that, I'm going to leave you with the words of Regina Bell. If I could, I would make sure every leader, and I'm changing it, had time to breathe, to rest, to lead from a full heart instead of an empty one. Leading with light means leading with clarity, with compassion, and with care for yourself and for others. Until next week, be well, be whole, be the leader the world needs, but most importantly, be healed. Blessings.